I'd like to give a special shout out to all my patrons, my Wildlings Knights watching Kingsguard. My Kingsguard include Brendan, Nick, Oscar, Stuart, Josephine, Ikaika, Amanda, RJ, Shad, Nicoletta, Kay, Jennifer, Sarah, Pat, Kevin, Ryan, and Michael. Thank you all so much. You're the best. Welcome back to the Fantasy Network, everyone. My name is, of course, Jimmy Nuts, and today we're going to be talking about the 8 books that I need to read in 2022. This is a video I was looking forward to making. This is everything that I've curated from my TBR that I just feel like it's been enough, it's been on there long enough, and I'm interested in it, and I'm making the declaration that I will read these 8 books within the time frame of 1 year. Now, most of them are part of series or trilogies or what have you. It doesn't mean that I'll complete the entire series because I could DNF, I might want to space them out, all kinds of things like that, right? But I am pledging to at least any of these series to start book 1. So what this isn't is, this is not a list of books that are just coming out in 2022. There's a lot of new releases I'm excited for, right? We have new Daniel Abraham, new Tad Williams, hopefully Brian Lee Durfee, John Gwynnt, all these great authors, right, writing books. R.F. Kuang's putting out a new book this year as well, starting a new series. All that stuff's really exciting. But this is stuff that's just been on the TBR for a while that I really want to prioritize. Some of these books have been out for literal decades, and it's time for me to read some of them. But before we jump into the top 8 books that I'm looking forward to reading in 2022, I do want to say there are a couple honorable mentions that aren't like guarantees by any means, but I think that they're likely to happen. And those are the Dresden Files, which I've already started, so that's just a continuation. Definitely going to be reading more of the Dresden Files in 2022. Number 2 is David Gemmell. I would like to get through some of David Gemmell's work. Legend, I actually already started. I don't know how far I'll make it into his work, but he was a priority that I've already began this year. There's actually 4. So the third is one that was going to be in the top 8, but I found out the series isn't finished, and that matters. I do prioritize finished series. I try to, at least. There's always exceptions to the rule. That doesn't mean that I don't buy new releases, because that is how series continue to be published, is purchasing, right? And conversation around, so I try to mention in, TBR wrap-up, book hauls, whatever. But Green Rider by Kristen Britton is one that I really, really wanted to start this year. She just released book 7, and there's one more book in this arc, and I think there might be more books after that. I'm not sure, but Green Rider is someone that Fenny Reads has recommended to me, but also many other people. And it's an epic fantasy series that I'd like to try, and I've heard a lot of good things about it. I don't know if I will get to it this year, especially knowing that it's unfinished, knowing I'll probably have to reread the entire series as more books come out. But we'll see. I might be able to fit it in. I really like to. And the last honorable mention that could maybe happen this year would be War of Light and Shadow by Janie Warts. I'm going to be talking about Janie Warts later in this video. But War of Light and Shadow is a massive series. The 11th final book's supposed to be out this year. I've heard nothing but good things. I've heard, if you love Malazan, this is another very challenging series that kind of bends the normal structure of fantasy narratives, and it just has a depth to it that not many other series can accomplish. So if possible, I would like to squeeze that in, but it's not a guarantee. Without any further ado, let's get into what I am absolutely going to read in 2022. These are like my top priorities. They're not weighted any certain way. There is one series in this list that is number 1 by a mile, and I'll talk about that near the end. But number 8's a book I probably should have already read. I've read the first page of this, and I think it's going to be a huge hit, and I've kind of saved it for a rainy day, but I think it's time. I think it's time to check out Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. There's been a lot of talk lately about it because he released the prologue for Doors of Stone. People were getting excited. I know it's another unfinished series. Whatever. I'm a Song of Ice and Fire fan. That stuff doesn't really bother me. And I've heard Name of the Wind stands alone pretty well. I don't know if I would be able to get to Wise Man's Fear. So specifically, we're talking about Name of the Wind. It's just such a instrumental piece of the fantasy genre. And I know some people love it, some people don't. It's gotten like more polarizing as more and more people read it. That's just the nature of popular books. But I have a feeling it's going to be a huge hit for me, and I'm finally going to read it in 2022. Number 7 is a little bit of a lesser-known book, but still very popular. It's a book that I've really wanted to get to for a long time. There are short stories set in this world, but this is the first novel installment, and it's from P. Degley Clark, and is A Master of Jin. I think that this is pretty fascinating. It's almost like historical alternative history fantasy in some ways. It's set in like 1912 Cairo, Egypt, and it was explained to me basically like if Cairo and Egypt was the central superpower of the world. And I know that there's a little bit of technology advancements there, and it just sounds awesome. I really am intrigued by this. I've read the first few pages of this. I read the first page of a lot of books that I pick up just to see if the writing matches with me like at first. And even if it doesn't, sometimes I'll still pick it up. But with this one, there's like a character and it was like talking about the challenge of stairs and being disabled. And I'm like, that reminds me of Glothka from First Law. That sounds great. And then you throw in Cairo and you throw in historical fantasy. I'm kind of sold and I'm really intrigued. It's very short, like 350 pages or something like that. And I've heard just outstanding things about the novellas and short stories set in this world, which I will also read with this. But A Master of Jin is definitely one of the most anticipated books of the year for me. And I'm excited to read something that not a ton of people have talked about. Coming in at number 6 will be book 1 in the Winnowing Flame trilogy by Jen Williams, and that is Ninth Reign. This is a trilogy that is, for some reason, not available, I don't even think, on Kindle in the United States. Jen Williams has had stuff published in the United States, but she is primarily published in the UK. Pretty popular there, it seems. A lot of my UK patrons have said, hey, check this out. It's really, really good. I've heard a lot of comparisons to Zhang Wen's Faithful and the Fallen quartet to this. I don't know if that's accurate. We'll have to see when I read it. But that bodes well because I love Zhang Wen. And I've heard it's just a really good time. And I heard it's a really unique world with some amazing characters. So I'm looking forward to that. It's going to be a little bit more fast-paced than a lot of the other stuff on this list, I have a feeling. And I think I'll probably be able to get to that. And I think actually some of my patrons might even be reading along with me whenever I get to that series. So I'm really excited to try out Jen Williams and the Winnowing Flame trilogy. Number 5 is an author that I have a lot of respect for, even though I've never read this author. Was a huge inspiration. Again, we keep mentioning Zhang Wen, but inspiration on Zhang Wen. George Martin has said that this is the best combat writer in all fiction, and that is Bernard Cornwell. And the series that I want to read from him this year, starting with The Winter King, is the War Lord Chronicles, which is an Arthurian tale. Sarah Reeves has read this. Alan from Library Alexandria has read this. I've not actually heard a bad thing about this. Even people who are lukewarm are like, yeah, it's pretty great, just wasn't for me. I've heard the audiobooks are fantastic, and I've heard Lancelot is one of the most hateable characters ever. And sometimes I like me a good, like, evil and good, and just having them clash and it being a heroic tale. I think that sounds awesome. This is one I've been wanting to get to for so long, and I kept putting it off, but now that I'm dedicating it here on camera, I will be forced to do it. Hold me accountable. I will read that this year. And hopefully, if I love it, I can continue through Bernard Cornwell's series. He has the Sharp series. He has the Last Kingdom stuff. Or it's the Saxon Chronicles, but on Netflix it's called The Last Kingdom, which I love, by the way. That show's amazing. I'd love to read the books as well. So this will be my first Cornwell, and I think it should be a home run. Before I move on to number 4, I do want to say when I made this video, I did a top 8 for 2021, what I wanted to read. I actually batted 100%. I at least started every single thing that I talked about. Melasma was on there. Robin Hobb was on there. It was only supposed to be a trilogy. I read all 16. There was a trilogy on there that I DNF'd, but I did really good last year, so I do feel confident that this puts enough arbitrary pressure on me to complete these series, which is why I like making these videos, even though future me will probably curse myself for stressing myself out, but it is what it is. Number 4 might be the one that I have the most hope for, but I'm also nervous about just based on things that I've heard about it, but it's also the one on the list that I think is most related to A Song of Ice and Fire, which is my favorite series of all time. It's just one of those things that get compared a lot, and that is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. Bookborn has read, everyone's read this but me, I think, at this point. I've heard it's a lot of tell, do not show, which is interesting because we always hear show, don't tell, but there is a proper way to do telling, I believe, and a lot of people say this is a good example of that, kind of distanced from the story, but it's about a dynasty, and it's about family politics and the lay of the land and all this war and scheming and politics, similar to A Song of Ice and Fire. I hope that this lands with me. I really, really do. Book 3 just came out, and the last book's coming out this year. It's a great time to start this. I would say this is probably the one I'm second most excited about. I'll talk about the number 1 here in a bit. But yeah, Grace Kings by Ken Liu has a lot of hype, and it's been personally recommended to me so many times that I hope people are right. I hope they're accurate, and I hope that it meshes with my taste. And I'll definitely probably do either discussions or just drawn out reviews because I think a lot of people are curious about this and they're not sure how to feel about it. And they're thick books, so we don't want to waste time in the investment. So I'm going to take the bullet and see what it's like. Again, I've heard mixed things from people that I trust, but none of them have come to me saying you definitely wouldn't like it. It seems people that come to me say you're going to love it. So here's to hoping. Number 3 is a book that I will actually be reading in February alongside Alan from the Library of Alexandria and Sarah Reeves. A bunch of other people are joining. It's a read-along on his channel, and I'm so excited. It just worked out that I already had this on the list, and I said, well, I guess it's happening in February if there's a read-along. And that is The Emperor's Blades by Brian Staveley, book 1 in the Unhewn Throne trilogy. Stavely is someone that kind of got on my radar because Petrick from Petrick Reads was really big on the newest book. I think it's like Empire's Ruin. And I actually bought it because I misread his review. And he said, you definitely need to read the original trilogy. And my brain like just malfunctioned. And I thought it said you don't need to. So I bought Empire's Ruin and think, sweet, I can just jump in. Listen, folks, publication order is always king. My friend Scott tells me it all the time, and it's just true. You just do publication order. Don't break it. So I'm going back. I'm going to read this original trilogy, all because of how hyped up I am for his newest release that I think started a new trilogy or something like that. It's like a new arc in the series. But The Emperor's Blades, I know almost nothing about. I know Alan's really, really excited about it. I've heard that it's pretty unique, and I think that there's a decent amount of magic. I'm pretty sure it's high fantasy, and there's like flying birds they ride around or something. I know almost nothing, but I've heard strong world building and really cool characters and a lot of twists and turns. Petrick is a huge fan of this, and it's going to be a lot of fun reading this alongside of Alan and everyone else that joins in on that read along. So if you're going to be in that, I'm really looking forward to it. And if you're not and you're curious, might be a good time to jump in. So we'll see where Stavely lands. This is the one on the list I am least sure of if it's going to be for me, but we're going to find out either way. And speaking of my good buddy Petrick from Petrick Reads, this is number 2 is one that he mentioned to me specifically. I'd have to go back and look at our messages, but I'm pretty sure he messaged me after he finished it. Or maybe I had commented on his review or something. And he said, Jimmy, this is you. Like, you have to read it. And one thing about Petrick, we don't always like the same books. But when Petrick tells me I'm going to like something, he is almost 100% of the time been accurate, and he has a good batting record with me. It's just true. He knows me and he knows my taste very well. And the number 2 spot here is Daughter of the Empire, book 1 in the Empire trilogy. This is co-authored by Janny Warts, which we mentioned earlier, and Raymond Feist. Now, I'm going to be honest. This is part of Rift War. It's a larger series by Raymond Feist. I'm not super interested in that right now. This is definitely me being more interested in the Janny side of the equation, and that's no slight to Feist. It's just I'm very interested in the world of Light and Shadow. So this is a way for me to kind of dabble in her writing. Obviously, Raymond wrote a bunch of this as well. But it's kind of a shorter intro, and I like that. And I've just heard this trilogy is phenomenal. I heard it has a little bit of context from the prior Rift War books, but it's not required. You can easily read this with all full comprehension and be okay. That's good news. So I want to be trying this out. I've heard it is like political intrigue and fantasy, maybe the best. So that's pretty high praise. I'm excited for this. I feel confident that I'm at least going to get something out of this. And I wouldn't say, let's say if I don't like this at all, that is not going to make me write off Janny Warts' other series at all. That would not happen because it is co-authored. So either way, this is kind of me dipping my toes into that. This series and Janny Warts writing and Raymond Feist writing and the whole thing. So it's a lot of experience all at once for one trilogy, and I think that's a lot of value for my time. And if I love it, like absolutely love it, I might just have to force Wars of Light and Shadow sooner. We all know I jump into big series when I shouldn't, so it'll probably happen at some point this year. But I'm really excited about the Empire trilogy and to see where it lands with me. And I know you're asking, you're saying, Jimmy, what is your number 1 series for 2022? Who has got you so hyped up that you made me wait all the way to the end of the video? Folks, it's a man by the name of Christopher Rocchio. And I'm not going to just say one book. This is the only one on this list that I guarantee I will read all of the books in this series that released this year, everything that's available to me. And that's partially because already in this year, I've already finished book 1 of this, and that is The Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio. It's a sci-fi, I would say it's sci-fantasy. I would say that it kind of goes into that realm. Series, I heard it was supposed to be a trilogy, and then it was going to be 5 books. I think it's going to be more than 5 books. I'm not sure. Someone in the comments, please let me know. I'm not in the know about this, but I do know there are 3 books out. Books 4 and 5 are releasing this year. And there's a novella called, I think it's The Lesser Devil or The Lesser Evil. I have it upstairs. I can't remember the name right now. But the Sun Eater series has been recommended to me by people who share my taste so often in such high regard that I could not wait to start this. I would have started it last year, but between Malazan, Dark Tower Realm of the Elderlings, Song of Ice and Fire reread, I was just like, I want to be able to give this my full attention. So I can tell you at this time of recording, I've already finished Empire of Silence, which is book 1 by Christopher Rocchio in the Sun Eater series. And Empire of Silence was awesome. I absolutely adored it. I will be doing a review on the channel, so I'm not going to say much more than that. But, you know, this is like the chronicles. You're being told the story of the Sun Eater, of someone who has taken out a son, that has seemingly committed genocide, it seems, but we're not sure. And we're going to get that nuanced history from that person's perspective and what the real story is, all the way back from the beginning. I love chronicle stories. Absolutely love it. I've not read Name of the Wind. I'm going to this year, as you already know. I've heard that it kind of feels like that, the reminiscing and the retelling of a story. It seems like that might be a little bit of a, of a similar story, I guess. So if you're into that, you might like this. I don't know. But Empire of Silence to me was just a breath of fresh air. I really liked Rocchio's writing. And while I think that there is still room to grow in books 2 and 3, I have heard unanimously from everyone who's either disliked book 1 or loved book 1 that book 2 and 3 are so much better. And Rocchio starts to come into his own and starts telling more of the story that he really wanted to tell. And I'm going to be honest, I'm getting fired up sitting here talking about this because Rocchio is very active. He has a YouTube channel here. I think it's called The Sun Eater. And he just seems so passionate when he talks. I can't help but to get fired up. I just can't. This dude is excited to give us this content. And from what I can tell from Empire of Silence, it's good stuff. Really, really good stuff. This is number 1. It's number 1. Simply is. The world building was awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. In Empire of Silence, and for it to get better than what it was, I was already in. I had just had a blast reading Empire of Silence, and also I have to say, even before reading Empire of Silence, I had a feeling about the series. I just did. Like I said, a lot of people who have the same taste as me recommending it is always a good sign, and thanks to everyone who did, by the way. But Sun Eater, the entire series, I'm going to read the books 4 and 5 that released this year, and I'm going to read the novella. It's going to be a trip. It's going to be a good time. There's going to be a lot of Sun Eater content here on the channel this year. So if you're into that or want to get into that, you have that to look forward to. I will do spoiler free. Maybe I'll bring some people on for spoiler discussions, but 2022 is the year of the Sun Eater, folks. It really is. All this stuff here is awesome. I'm really excited, but number 1 priority, definitely Sun Eater by Christopher Rocchio. And that is all. That is the top 8 things that I need to read. Am I going to squeeze in other stuff? You know it. I'm going to overburden myself and stress myself out with these crazy TBRs. And it's fun. I have a good time doing it. I love it. We're still in the middle of doing the A Song of Ice and Fire reread, which will finish up this year. And I will be finishing Malazan within a month, which is insane. And then I will read the extended novels, the stuff by Esselmont and then Erickson's other books in the Malazan series. So there's a ton there. I'm trying to think of other things off the top of my head. I don't know. There's a lot of stuff I'm going to get to. And I mentioned Green Rider, Dresden, those things will probably end up happening too. So it's going to be a good time. Definitely going to read some Stephen King this year. But what are you reading? What do you need to read this year? That's what I want to know. Not to be read. What do you need to read in 2022? Hey, if you like this video, hit like. If you didn't like it, you hit dislike. If you loved it, go ahead and think about hitting subscribe. I'm going to have more videos about all the books I talked about here, plus other content, discussions, and Chatting with Nuts podcast, which will be back on January 21st. And my guest in the first episode of Chatting with Nuts in 2022 is none other than Christian from Lost in Discovery. In my opinion, the best Stormlight channel there is here on YouTube. If you haven't checked out Lost in Discovery, make sure to go and do that. And to show up at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time on January 21st, Friday, for the first episode of Chatting with Nuts in 2022. Until I see you next time, be good, be safe, and remember to always keep turning the page.